The knock wasn't gentle. It was the kind that came with paperwork and a badge. From the kitchen, I could still hear Roxanne's voice upstairs. Sweet, syrupy fake. And over here's the antique mirror I refurbished myself, she cooed into her phone. She was wearing my robe, in my bedroom, calling it hers. I sipped my Earl Grey. Steam rose past my face like incense. Outside, the cicadas sang like nothing was about to burn. She had no idea what was coming. Where in the world are you listening from? Subscribe if you've ever dreamed of quiet revenge done right. My name is Francine Bellamy. I'm 61 years old, and for most of my life I made hats. Real ones. With lace velvet veils and stiff ribbon that could hold a storm. I used to tell my clients, a good hat doesn't just sit. It announces. That's what I thought I'd be doing in my retirement, reading by the window, trimming roses, maybe making the occasional church bonnet for Easter Sunday. But instead, I found myself sipping tea in silence, watching another woman wear my life like she'd ordered it off a catalog. The house I lived in wasn't just a house. It was a Queen Anne in Ardsley Park. Savannah wraparound porch, stained glass, clawfoot tub, and the kind of creaking stairs that remembered every footstep. It belonged to my grandmother, then my mother, then me. It held laughter in the walls, grief in the floorboards, and dreams in every window pane. Everett and I married 12 years ago after both losing our first spouses. He was a quiet, polished real estate man with a silver tongue and too much cologne. He said he loved how I never raised my voice. I used to think that was romantic. Now I know it was convenient. At first, things were warm. He brought coffee to bed, fixed the porch fan without being asked, even helped me reorganize my sewing room. But the past year, things shifted. He started working later, started saying things like, "You need more help around here," or "You shouldn't be lifting boxes with your knee like that." That was when Roxanne arrived. Just for a week, he said. Her place got fumigated, and she used to work with me at the office. Poor things got nowhere to go. She came in with her fake nails, her tiny suitcases, and a voice like cotton candy too sweet to trust. She called me ma'am, even though she was barely 35, and I still walked faster than her in heels. I set her up in the guest room, the one with the dusty floral wallpaper and a mattress too stiff for real sleep. She wrinkled her nose and said, "Oh, this is charming." Everett looked at me over dinner that night and said, "She's just grateful, Fran. Don't take it the wrong way." I didn't, not yet. But I did notice things, like how she never offered to help, how she always poured the last cup of coffee without asking, how she sat in Everett's recliner like she belonged there, and how he never asked her to move. I started hearing laughter behind closed doors, shared glances at the dinner table, inside jokes I wasn't part of. But I'm not the type to throw plates or yell in the street. No, ma'am, I wait, I watch. And when I move like thunder in an empty sky. Because I wasn't just being ignored, I was being replaced. And they thought I wouldn't notice. But hats aren't the only things I know how to make. I also know how to make an exit plan. It started small, almost nothing at all. Roxanne began staying in later and later. She used to leave after breakfast with some excuse about checking on a friend or running errands, but now she lingered. She'd sit in the breakfast nook with Everett, legs crossed too tightly, voice just a little too high, laughing at things that weren't funny. I'd hear them from the hallway, that syrupy giggle of hers curling down the stairs like smoke. One morning, I walked in on them in the kitchen. She was feeding him a bite of grapefruit with a tiny gold fork, his mouth open like a reflex, like it had happened before. They both jumped when they saw me. Roxanne said, "Oh, I was just showing Everett the candied rinds I made last night. He said he's never had any." Everett coughed, changed the subject, talked about the rain. Later that week, I found one of my teacups, my favorite porcelain one with the blue rim in the trash, cracked clean down the middle. No one said anything. No one left a note. I pulled it out and held it in my hand. The edges were sharp. It had been mine since 1982. That night, she came down in one of Everett's dress shirts. Too long for her frame sleeves rolled up. She said she couldn't find her robe. Everett didn't even blink. He used to fuss if I wore his shirt, said I'd stretch the collar. Now he just said, "Looks good on you, Rox." Rox. No one in this house had nicknames until she arrived. That Sunday, she joined us for dinner. I made shrimp and grits, Everett's favorite. She added hot sauce before tasting it, then smiled at him and said, "You like it spicy, right, babe?" I watched him nod, watched him laugh, watched him forget I was still at the table. I excused myself early that night, went upstairs, shut the door quietly. They thought I was naive. They thought old meant blind. But there's something you learn after 6 decades of watching people lie. They get sloppy, comfortable, and sometimes the worst kind of betrayal doesn't start with a lie. It starts with a giggle, a bite of fruit, a name said too easily. Was I being replaced or just repurposed? The lies didn't come in shouts. They came in smiles. Sweet, practiced, effortless. One afternoon, I opened the hallway linen closet and a bottle of perfume rolled out. It wasn't mine. Too floral, too young. The label said Love Rush. I held it up at dinner. Did one of you drop this? Roxanne laughed. Oops, that must be mine. It must have slipped into your things when I was folding laundry. I hadn't asked her to fold anything. Everett cut his steak without a word. The next week, I came home early from my garden club meeting. The house was quiet, eerily so. As I passed the master bedroom, I noticed the door wasn't just closed. It was locked. We didn't lock doors in this house. Not for years. Not since Everett moved in and said there's nothing here worth hiding. But now apparently there was. I knocked once, lightly. No answer. I turned and walked away. Half an hour later, it was open again. The bed was made too neatly. My lavender sachet was gone from under the pillows. In its place, a new throw blanket I'd never seen, silky red and monogrammed. Arca. I stood at the threshold. Roxanne came up behind me, still in gym clothes. Oh, sorry, I borrowed the master today. Guest shower wasn't working, she said, panting, like she'd just jogged in from a lie. Everett chimed in from behind. We've been meaning to call a plumber. Meantime, no harm in letting her use it, right? I nodded, smiled. But I didn't forget. That evening, I checked the guest shower myself. It worked fine. Water pressure strong, steam rose in swirls. The only thing broken was the truth. Later that night, I found Everett's phone charging on the counter. He'd always been protective of it before, but now careless. I didn't dig. I didn't need to. A single notification lit up the screen. Loved last night. Still taste you. Still taste you. I turned off the phone, turned off the lights, turned off whatever part of me still believed this was temporary. Because liars get brave when they think you're too tired to care. But I wasn't tired. I was sharpening. Some people say the truth comes out in court. Mine came out on an iPad. Roxanne had left hers on the coffee table one afternoon while she was in the kitchen, humming off-key to Whitney Houston and pouring rosé into one of my crystal glasses. The screen lit up with a ping. I hadn't planned to touch it, but when I looked down there, it was a message preview, bold and vulgar. Still dreaming about Sunday. I love our mornings in that bed. My bed. I picked up the device, not to snoop, to confirm. There was no passcode. That was her first mistake. Her second mistake was naming a folder Home Vibes and thinking I'd never look. Inside photos, selfies, her in my robe, her in Everett's shirt, her legs on my duvet captioned, Manifesting Life with Ev. Then I found the video. She was giving a tour of the master bedroom. Panning slowly over my antique dresser, the carved headboard I refinished by hand, my mother's needlepoint framed on the wall. Hey babes, so this is where the magic happens, she purred, blowing a kiss at the camera. Everett walked by shirtless in the background. She giggled. He winked. I pressed pause. I didn't shake, didn't scream, didn't cry. I just felt cold, like the walls had finally told the truth after months of holding it in. I emailed the video to myself, then I emailed it to Adele Tran. Subject line, this is enough, yes. She replied 6 minutes later. Yes, it's more than enough. I'll start paperwork. That evening, Everett poured me a glass of wine. You okay? He asked. I sipped slowly. Just tired, I said. I wasn't. I was awake in a way I hadn't been in years. Because the worst thing you can do to a woman like me is assume I won't do anything. He gave her my bedroom. Now I was going to take back the house. That night, I couldn't sleep in the guest room. The mattress was too firm. The window whistled when the wind blew. The wallpaper peeled in one corner, tiny pink violets trying to hold on. I stared at the ceiling, my hands folded on my chest, like I was waiting for a funeral. And in a way, I was. I kept thinking about all the little trades I'd made over the years. Gave up my last name when I married Everett. Gave up my sewing room when he needed a home office. Gave up weekends for his open houses. Gave up silence for his snoring. And now, he gave me up for someone who wore my perfume like a costume. My bedroom wasn't just where I slept. It was where I grieved my mother, where I celebrated turning 50 with red lipstick and cheap champagne, where I once danced alone to Nina Simone barefoot on creaky floors. Now Roxanne was filming herself there, flipping her hair, flirting with my mirror. And Everett, he stood by like I was just another chair to rearrange. I thought about confronting them. I imagined shouting, throwing that red silk throw off the bed, screaming until they shrank into nothing. But that wasn't me. Not my style, not my victory. I didn't want noise. I wanted precision. I got up and walked barefoot down the hallway, opened the old filing cabinet under the stairs, found the folder labeled Deed and Trust. It still had my maiden name on it, Francine L. Weatherly. The last part of me they hadn't erased. I ran my fingers along the paper's edge. Then I picked up my phone and called Adele. It was 1:12 a.m. She answered on the second ring. Fran, I said only 2 words. Let's begin. She didn't ask why. She didn't need to. Some things don't require explanation, just signatures. The next morning, I clipped roses like nothing had happened. Sunlight filtered through the magnolia trees, and the scent of earth clung to my gloves. I worked slowly, deliberately. Everett walked by, kissed the top of my head like always, and said he might be late coming home. Roxanne was behind him wearing one of my scarves. I nodded, smiled. But something in me had shifted. Not rage, not sorrow. Just stillness, the kind that settles in the air right before a thunderstorm. Inside, I changed out of my garden shoes, washed my hands, and took the manila folder from the drawer. Deed, survey, ownership records. Still all in my name. Everett had never bothered to ask. He assumed love meant access. That morning, I drove to Adele's office. She didn't greet me with a handshake. She just opened the file and said I pulled comps from the neighborhood. We're ready. I signed. Each stroke of the pen felt like a reclaiming. By the time I left, the papers were in motion. Listing, buyer, quiet sale. No announcements. No for sale sign in the yard. Just movement beneath the surface. Like an undertow. That evening, Everett mentioned wanting to host a Sunday brunch for their friends. I want Roxanne to feel like this is her space too, he said, carving roast chicken. I took a bite, chewed slowly, and said, what a thoughtful idea. Because he had no idea that by the time the quiche hit the oven, he'd be getting served. And Roxanne, she'd be live streaming from a house that no longer belonged to either of them. The key to real revenge is timing. Not speed, not spectacle, but the slow, steady tightening of a rope they never knew was there. The next week, I made banana bread, wrapped it in linen, left it outside Roxanne's door with a note. For your brunch with the girls. She posted a thank you selfie holding the loaf like a prize. Manifesting sweetness, she wrote. They thought I was softening. They thought I was adjusting. But I was documenting. Every photo she posted, every caption, every moment she filmed inside that house, I sent them to Adele. Excellent, she said. Proof of occupancy. Meanwhile, I visited the post office. Updated my forwarding address. Secured a P.O. box under my maiden name. Next, the safe deposit box. Everett never knew I had one. Inside, copies of the deed insurance policy and a backup USB with all Roxanne's little videos. The one where she calls the house my dream palace was Adele's favorite. You're building a beautiful case, she told me. I smiled, not because it was beautiful, because it was airtight. One evening, Roxanne left her laptop open on the kitchen counter. I didn't touch it. Didn't need to. She'd left a tab open. Best hot tub brands for Georgian summer homes. She was planning renovations in my house. That night, Everett asked if we could convert the guest room into a nursery. Said Roxanne had baby fever. I stirred my tea, said I'd think about it. Then I ordered moving boxes, just 5. Enough for what I planned to take my sewing shears, 3 silk hats, mother's Bible, and the portrait from the upstairs hallway. The one of my grandmother in her Sunday dress standing on the porch of this very house, arms folded like she knew this day would come. By Thursday, Adele had a buyer. Full cash offer, no contingencies, close in 2 weeks. I picked the closing date myself. And Sunday, 10:45 a.m. Why Sunday, Adele asked. Because that's when brunch starts. And some things deserve to be served piping hot. Sunday arrived with blue skies and blooming azaleas. Roxanne woke up early. I could hear her heels click across the hardwood, her voice humming something pop and meaningless. I stayed in my room, let her have her fantasy. By 10, the kitchen smelled like baked eggs and perfume. She was bustling about in a floral dress, my old one from Macy's, which she'd found in the attic. Everett set the table, used my grandmother's china, the set I'd told him never to touch. But today I said nothing. I even handed him the napkin rings myself. When their friends arrived, 2 realtors, a yoga instructor, a woman who said vibes too often, I greeted them at the door like a gracious hostess. Lovely to meet you, I said, offering lemonade. No, please sit wherever you like. Everett smiled like he'd won something. Roxanne laughed loud enough for the neighbors to hear. I didn't flinch. I wore linen cream-colored with a single pearl brooch. Looked like a widow at peace. Which in a way I was. By 10:42 a.m., Roxanne was mid-sentence, something about converting the sunroom into her content corner. She held her phone in one hand, gesturing with the other. So I'm thinking pink velvet chairs and a ring light. Maybe call it the Rox room, get it? The room chuckled. Then came the knock. Firm, authoritative. 3 beats pause, then 2 more. Everett looked up confused. Expecting anyone, one of the guests asked. No, he said, slowly standing. Roxanne frowned. I didn't order anything. I didn't move, didn't blink, because I knew that knock. I'd arranged it myself. He opened the door. Two deputies stood in pressed uniforms, clipboards in hand. Behind them, Adele in navy and heels. "Mr. Bellamy," she asked calmly, "we're here to deliver formal notice. This property has been sold. You have 30 days to vacate." Everett stammered. "What sold? This is our—" Adele handed him the envelope. "No, Mr. Bellamy," she said, voice level. "This was never yours, and it's no longer hers, either." Roxanne's face drained to gray. The brunch guests froze mid-bite. Someone's fork hit a plate. And I sipped my tea. Earl Grey. Hot. With a hint of victory. For a long second, no one moved. The brunch plate sat half full. A carafe of mimosa sweat on the table. Everett stood frozen at the door, the envelope in his hand like it had burned him. This has to be a mistake," he finally managed. "We live here. Adele cut him off. "The deed was never transferred. The seller is sole owner. Sale closed Friday. This is official county documentation." She gestured to the deputy. He nodded once. Professional, neutral. Roxanne rose from her seat like a statue cracking apart. "I don't understand," she said, looking at Everett. "You said the paperwork you told me." She turned to me, voice sharp and shaking. "You can't do this. You gave us that room. You said you were fine with it." I stood slowly, smoothed my linen skirt, looked her in the eye. "I never said I was fine," I said. "I said nothing, and you mistook my silence for surrender." One of the guests tried to quietly slip a phone into her purse. Another sipped mimosa like it might erase her from the moment. Everett stepped forward. "You're throwing us out. After everything? After I moved in here to build a life with you." I let out a breath. "Exactly. You moved in, but you never built anything. You just rearranged the furniture." He flinched. "Fran, you locked me out of my own room," I said, steady. "You let her wear my robe, call my house hers, erase every trace of the woman who invited you in." Roxanne let out a half laugh, half sob. "This is abuse. I'll go online. I'll tell people what you did." "You already did," I said softly. "And thank you for documenting so thoroughly." She blinked. "What?" Adele cleared her throat. "Screenshots, videos, multiple posts referring to this home as yours, despite legal evidence to the contrary. We'll leave now, but you'll receive written notice via mail. 30 days. Roxanne looked around like she'd just realized the room wasn't clapping anymore. The yoga instructor excused herself. The realtor couple whispered, then followed. One by one, they vanished like guests leaving a party no one wanted to admit they'd attended. Everett stood there, aging by the second, his face, pale eyes wide. I passed him the folded napkin I'd used. "Keep it," I said, "souvenir." Then I walked upstairs, quiet, deliberate. In the master bedroom, Roxanne's suitcase lay open on the bench. I didn't touch it. I opened the closet, took down my old quilt, folded it carefully. From the top drawer, I retrieved the photograph of my grandmother. She was smiling in it, as if she'd known I'd need her strength this exact day. Downstairs, I could hear Everett muttering, pacing, then silence. I came down with just one bag, my Bible, my keys, the pearl brooch still pinned to my collar. Adele was waiting at the curb with her car door open. "You ready?" she asked. I looked back once, not at the people, at the house. It didn't feel like a loss. It felt like a chapter closed. We went to the bank, deposited the check. Adele handled the wire. I didn't ask about Everett and Roxanne. Didn't wonder if they'd beg. Didn't care if they screamed. Some things don't need a curtain call. 3 days later, I moved into a condo near Forsyth Park. Smaller, quieter, mine. I bought a lemon tree and a pot for the balcony. Hung up lace curtains. Framed the photo of my grandmother. I didn't post about it. Didn't announce it. I just lived it. A week passed before I got the voicemail. Everett's voice shaky. "Fran, you didn't have to. We could have talked." Delete. The next day, a Facebook message from Roxanne. "You're evil, and you'll die alone. Report, block." That Friday, my granddaughter Noelle showed up with a backpack and a hug that smelled like lavender shampoo. "Grandma," she said, "you did it." I smiled. "Baby, I reclaimed it." We spent the evening making pasta from scratch, dancing in socks, laughing over things only two women of different generations could understand. She asked me what it felt like. "To win," she said. I thought for a second, then answered, "It doesn't feel like revenge." She raised a brow. "It feels like clean sheets." And that's exactly what I gave myself. A new place, a clean bed, a door no one else had the key to. Everett had taken my bedroom, but I took back everything, and I didn't have to raise my voice to do it. I just signed my name and left the door wide open so they could walk themselves out. After the last guest left, Roxanne's voice turned sharp, no longer sweet, no longer curated for an audience. "You promised me this house," she screamed at Everett. "I left everything behind, my job, my lease, my life." "You didn't leave," I muttered. "You invaded." She spun toward me, eyes blazing. "You think this makes you strong? You'll rot in that little condo alone with your stupid tea. Everett said nothing, just stared at the deed like it might rewrite itself. He looked old, not just older used up. A man who realized too late that charm doesn't sign contracts and arrogance doesn't grant ownership. I walked past them without another word. Outside, a few neighbors had gathered Mrs. Copley from next door, Mr. Mendoza from across the street. They didn't wave, they just watched. Maybe they'd seen it coming. Maybe they'd heard the laughter through the walls and wondered why I never joined. I didn't give them a show, just a nod. Dignity is quieter than drama. That first night in the condo, I didn't sleep. I rested. Real rest. Where the air is still, the sheets are yours, and no one is filming from your pillows. I lit a lavender candle, unpacked one box at a time. In the bathroom, I placed a new towel, soft sage green. On the windowsill, I stood a single rose in water. The silence was thick and kind. No heels, no doors slamming, no voices pretending to be polite. Just me, and the sound of reclaiming space. I stood in the doorway and whispered, "This is mine." Not rented, not borrowed, not shared out of obligation. Mine. And sometimes that's all the victory a woman needs. 3 months passed. I no longer checked the mailbox for letters from Everett. They stopped coming. Roxanne posted once more a bitter quote about older women stealing joy. It got 5 likes. I spent most mornings on my little balcony, watering the lemon tree, listening to jazz on the radio, watching the sky shift from gold to blue to dusk. Noelle came every weekend. She started keeping a journal. She called it, "Things I'll Never Let Happen to Me." One afternoon, she asked, "Will you ever talk to him again?" I shook my head. "I don't need more words, baby. I lived the truth." We baked sweet potato pie together. She added too much cinnamon. We laughed until our eyes watered. She said, "I hope I'm strong like you one day." I looked at her sharp eyes, steady hands, no fear in her voice. "You already are," I said. I joined a women's group at the community center, not to talk about divorce, but about boundaries. Most of the women were older, wiser. Tired of being told that sacrifice was their highest virtue. I told them what I told Noelle. Love without respect isn't love, it's a leash. They nodded, some cried, some just sat there finally seen. We started a project, a housing fund for women 60 and up who needed a fresh start, not pity. Adele volunteered to help us register it. We called it Key Women. Because sometimes all you need is a set of keys that only you can use. People think revenge is loud. Mine wasn't. It was as quiet as a closing door, as soft as new sheets, as final as a signature. Everett gave away my room. I gave away the illusion that he ever had power over me. I didn't win by shouting. I won by walking away while they were still looking for applause. And I never looked back, only forward, into the life I built with both hands and my name alone.